Hello, everybody. Welcome to Parsha Hour. Nice to see you all. Okay, the golden calf. We have arrived at the greatest sin that the people of Israel ever committed. Is that right? It's funny because we do sort of think of it that the tradition has kind of named that as the ultimate failure. You know, Christian tradition really took up the eating of the apple, but Jewish rabbinic tradition really focuses on the golden calf as our great moment of sin and failure. I was talking to a friend of mine, Rabbi Noah Kushner, this week, and she said, you know, it's funny because the Torah doesn't make the Bible itself doesn't make that big a deal of the golden calf. It's an episode, and then we sort of move on, but rabbinic literature thereafter is obsessed with it, and I which is a great point. Like maybe it means more to us in some ways, or than it did to the people of Israel. That's something to think about as we head in. But I sort of responded that, yeah, it's not surprising that this would be taken as the great moment of disaster, because it is so shocking as a read. I mean, we just received we liberated from Egypt, received the 10 commandments. In the 10 commandments, it says, don't make any other gods. And then the very next thing that happens is they make other gods. So the whole thing is so jarring that, it seizes you as you read through the Torah. And then, of course, there's the fact that it seizes Moses also. And Moses' great response is that he smashes the tablets, which becomes another great moment of disaster in our Parsha. So all of that is to say that, yes, we have to think about the golden calf. We have to process the golden calf. We have to figure out what happened there. What happened there? What happened? And to that question, what happened there? I want today to look through a particular lens and ask the question, what happened there, not just from our perspective, but from the perspective of the people involved. Okay, so let me say what I mean by that. I was learning studying this week with a good friend of mine, Rafi McGarrick, and he's a professor at University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana. Really smart guy. And we were learning from, we studied together this sefer that I'm going to show you now, this book called the Pachad Yitzchak. Okay, the Pachad Yitzchak is the name of this book in the 20th century. That I hear someone's got noise in the background. Kate, I think that's you. You. The Pachad Yitzchak is one of the great teachers of the 20th century and focused his teaching around the holidays in particular. And he's very fond of this teaching, and I don't know where it originates, but it's become a kind of a classic teaching that there's something that Yom Kippur and Purim have in common. Those two holidays are connected, and they're connected because Yom Kippurim is what it's called in the Torah. The Yom Kippurim is can be read as the day that is like Purim. So there's something about Yom Kippur, the holiest, most godly, sacred, self-punishing day of the year. There's something that day shares with Purim, the most terrestrial, jolly revelry kind of holiday, right? So that in itself is kind of a fun kind of yin-yang comparison to work with. But in the midst of that comparison, the Pachad Yitzchak, Rav Yitzchak Hutner, says the following thing, and this is the lens that I'm going to use today, that I want us to look through to think about the episode of the golden calf. He points out a very simple, very, very obvious thing, which is that, I've never thought about it this way, which is that whatever's happening down below is one scene in the golden calf, And meanwhile, there's another scene happening up above, right? Because the whole point is this happens while Moses is talking to God. So let me show you how he puts it, because it's worth looking at, and then we'll say a blessing and begin. So the Pachad Yitzchak, Rav Yitzchak Hutner, says, and he's a 20th century rabbi in Europe and then America and then Israel, on Yom Kippur, the day Moses descended from the mountain. Now that's a important piece of information just for the logic of this idea, which is that tradition records the day of the golden calf, the day Moses came down from the mountain, as Yom Kippur. Okay, so Moses is coming down the mountain, and that becomes Yom Kippur, really, because you can see what the connection is. We're now going to have something to atone for. So the golden calf is Yom Kippur, and on Yom Kippur, Rav Hutner says, the day Moses descended from the mountain, it says, "Let me alone, and I will destroy them." That's what God said to Moses, as Moses records it later in Deuteronomy. "Let me alone. Haraf mimeni vashmidam. I will destroy them." That's God talking to Moses, and we're going to look at that conversation. Whereas on Purim it says that there was a letter sent out to all of the nation to destroy, kill, and to annihilate. Okay, so one conversation between God and Moses, and one is a letter that was sent out to the whole country, an edict, and so he says there's a very important distinction that we recognize here, which is that on Yom Kippur, just as back then on the day of the golden calf, but also just as a holiday, both the decree and the exoneration were only known up above in the conversation between the Holy One and Moses. Whereas on Purim, both the decree and the exoneration were known down here in the dealings between Achashverosh, Mordechai, and Haman. Okay, this is the really interesting part to me, and this is the part that I want to think about, that there's a whole exchange that is happening up above during the incident of the golden calf that the people are not aware of. That's the point that he's making. Purim, the threat, the danger, the salvation, all of it, and it's a very Purim thing to say, because Purim is famously the only book in the Hebrew Bible that doesn't have God in it. And it's a very earthly holiday. And so all the more so, everything that's happening, the wins, the loses, the salvation, all of the reckoning is happening here on the terrestrial plane. But in the episode of the golden calf, there are two stories happening at once. And I think this is such a fascinating lens, both for the golden calf, and there's some good digging that we can do in the story of the golden calf to try and unlock the different experiences of the folks up there and the folks down here, or the folk up there and the folks down here. But I actually think this is the reason I want to focus on this today is not just for the golden calf, but because it's an important lens for us to bring to our entire reading of the Torah, which is that to remember that the people of Israel do not know everything that is happening that we know. Whenever Moses is with God, unless Moses reports it back, the people of Israel don't know what's happening. And this is really here's the rub, the twist, the kunz, as they say in Yiddish. The really interesting question here is whether or not Moses is aware of what's going down below when Moses is up there, right? So two entirely different experiences of the same episode, and we get them all. And I guess God gets them all, right? God seems to be aware of both levels, but Moses isn't and the people aren't. So today I want to try and take us a little bit through the people's experience, which is actually pretty well-trod territory. We'll think a little bit about that. And then I want to ask a question I think is less frequently asked, which is, what was Moses's experience of this whole episode? Okay, great. So let's take a little break and say a little blessing, and then we'll dive in. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Okay. Anything in what I said so far not clear? Any clarifying questions that you have out there that need to be asked before we dive in? Yeah, Noah.
Well, one thing that's sort of always puzzled me is really the time frame, because we get commentary on that. Moses goes up, then golden calf, then he comes down, then we get somewhere in there the 13 attributes of mercy. And one thing I always like is this one was my grandfather's bar mitzvah portion in 1937, and his second bar mitzvah portion when he turned 83, and third one when he turned 96 a few years ago.
Okay, good. So questions here about the whole timeline. Like, wait a minute, there's a lot of up and down from the moment we get Mount Sinai. Moses is going up and down. And again, this is part of I want us to be training ourselves to think, oh, every time Moses is up, the people don't know what's going on, right? And every time Moses is up, he doesn't know what's going on down there. This is just the most explicit example of that. But Noah says that, wait a minute, that's right. There's a lot of up and down especially in these chapters. So let's just take a step back for a moment and try to follow. There's some just obvious and important timeline, let's say brackets that we should keep track of as we move in. So here's the source sheet, and you can click into it, and I want to take us back first. Before we get to the golden calf, I just when we last left our hero, that kind of take us back. I want to take us back to chapter 24 of the book of Exodus, which is the end of Parshat Mishpatim, the end of the big dump of laws. There's the 10 Commandments, and then immediately after the 10 Commandments, the people say, whoa, this is too much. We can't handle it. And then it's not, then there's there's a bunch more laws that get mentioned, but it's not clear when Moses exactly responds. But let's just think of it as more simply, the 10 Commandments, it's too much for the people. The people say, you speak to God now. Don't let us speak to God because it's too much for us and we'll die. And Moses says, fine. And so Moses goes up to speak to God. And this is what that scene looks like. And it's very explicit. Now, when I talk about the different kind of levels of experience, there are also some folks in the middle, and we can keep track of them also, Joshua and the elders. So let's take a look. Let's take a look. This is Exodus chapter 24, just after Mount Sinai. And Adonai said to Moses, God said to Moses, come up to me on the mountain and wait there. Stay here, and I will give you the stone tablets with the teachings and the commandments, which I have inscribed to instruct them. Okay, so here's the first indication that we're going to get tablets. We're going to get the things you heard at Mount Sinai, you're going to write them down. So Moses and his attendant Joshua arose, and Moses ascended to the mountain of God. With Joshua, it seems, and that's another mystery here. Where does Joshua enter and exit? That's something we can think about along the way. To the elders, he had said, wait for us here until we return to you. Again, most people assume Joshua went up a certain ways, but not all the way. You have Aaron and Hur with you. Let anyone who brings a dispute approach them. Right, so this is putting Aaron in charge, and that's going to go very disastrously. When Moses had ascended the mountain, the cloud covered the mountain. The presence of Adonai abode on the mountain of Mount Sinai, and the cloud hid it for 6 days. On the seventh day, God called to Moses from the midst of the cloud. Now the presence of Adonai appeared in the sight of the Israelites as a consuming fire on top of the mountain. Moses went inside the cloud and ascended the mountain. And here it's just Moses, so I guess he left Joshua behind, left everybody behind. And Moses remained on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights, famously, right? Later on, it's going to say, I didn't eat, I didn't drink, he's just there communing with God for 40 days and 40 nights, okay? Now, what happens in that time? I mean, we don't know exactly, but we know when it ends. We know when it ends because this is chapter 24. Then there is a bunch of material in the middle, including the last couple of parshas we've read, the information on building the tabernacle, the instructions on the new priesthood. And even at the beginning of our parsha this week, we have the counting of the people instructions. We have the construction of the copper washing station. There's all these things that happen in the middle between 24 and chapter 31. All of these laws, all of these instructions, presumably everything we're hearing in between is just Moses's experience, the things Moses was hearing from God. And then in chapter 31, verse 18, upon finishing with him on Mount Sinai, God gave Moses the 2 tablets of the pact, stone tablets inscribed with the finger of God. Okay, and that's chapter 31. And then chapter 32 begins our story. Okay, so I just want to say this again really clearly. Mount Sinai, God communicates directly to people. People can't handle it. Moses says, okay, I'll go up by myself. Moses goes up and he's there for 40 days. And that's everything we've been hearing about in the Torah. That's the Torah has a device where it can just say, oh, Moses is gone. Now Moses is talking to God. So I can just give you a bunch of laws, right? I can just dump laws at you. And the narrative has been paused, and not really paused. The time hasn't been paused because 40 days are clicking, but now 40 days of Moses being up there. Okay. And then it ends and the 40 days are over and God hands Moses the tablets. Okay. And then the very next scene is the golden calf we're going to head into now. I see a hand from my mother. Right. Okay, great. That's great. Okay, so I'll answer that question. My mother notices that there's interesting language here in the verse that we just read, which is that the tablets were inscribed, it says, with the finger of God. The finger of God. That's unusual language. We only see it one other place in the Torah. The finger of God. And my mother's asking, so what's up with that? Like, what's going on there? And it's a good question because it is very unusual language. And my mother suggests, and I think she's right, that that's probably why we use a pointer yad, like the finger of God, maybe there's some connection there. So that's an interesting question. But the reason it's important to note the finger of God here is because something like magical is happening here. Like the tablets are really being carved by God. That's not true for the second tablets. The second tablets Moses carves, and they're not made with the finger of God. So I don't know exactly what it means, but the point is this experience that Moses was having. This experience was like it was being in God's in God's presence and experiencing a kind of direct contact with God. God is doing the work. God is carving the tablets. There's something about this whole scene and where Moshe is that is. It's like a dream. It's like supernatural. Okay. See another hand come up. Hal and Kathy.
So, I mean, in this vein, it refers to the tablets not as Shnei Luchot Habrit, but Shnei Luchot something else, the pact. So it's a different word that they use to describe
the tablets of the testimony.
Yeah.
The tablets of the testimony. Right, which implies that these tablets testify the pact here. Maybe the language is related to testimony. So these tablets testify to what happened back at Mount Sinai, right? Seems like. Okay, so there we are. This is the scene. Like we're now and what Hal asks links the end of this scene for us back to the moment we last left the people. They had just experienced Sinai, mind-blowing, and then they said, Moshe, you take care of it. And Moses is gone for over a month. Moses is gone. And we start to feel what kind of experience Moses is having. Moses is watching God create things. Moses is receiving all of these strange new laws. Moses is in the clouds. The people, meanwhile, having just experienced God in the fullest way, that that history has ever known, right, according to our tradition, suddenly have nothing. And this, what we're about to do is, I said, this is well-trod territory. This is a famous insight, although it's not obvious. It is an insight. It may be that this is the moment where you realize this, and if you do, this is an important insight into the Torah. By which I mean to say, why did the people create the golden calf? I think last year's class we actually dealt with this question, and the truth is, it's pretty obvious in a certain way. So let's take a look now at the people beginning to create the golden calf, and I want to ask you, what's going on with them? Why did they create the golden calf? And this is our first attempt to sort of think about the people's experience. They had Sinai, now they don't have Moses for 40 days, and then they build a golden calf. And I think it's almost pshat. It's almost obvious from the text, although we'll try and draw it out a little bit with help from the rabbis. But take a look. Okay, so this is chapter 31. They're all done. The tablets are ready. Moses is about to come down. And just at that moment, when the people saw, Vayara am ki boshesh Moshe, that people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, right? This word boshesh is delayed or took a long time, tarried. When people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, the people gathered against Aaron and said to him, "Come, make us a god who shall go before us. For that fellow Moses, the man who brought us from the land of Egypt, we don't know what happened to him. We don't know what happened to him." Aaron said, "Okay," and so then it gets made. And there are many great discussions to have about what's going on with Aaron and what's he thinking. But for now, I want to ask more about the people, Aaron and the people, the experience down below. And Aaron says, "Take off the gold rings that are on the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them to me." And all the people took off the gold rings, and he took it and he cast it into a molten calf. And he said again, "This is your God, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt." And when Aaron saw this, he built an altar before it, and Aaron announced, "Tomorrow shall be a festival of God." Early the next day, the people offered up burnt offerings and brought sacrifices of well-being. And they sat down to, this line is famous, and they sat down to eat and drink, and they got up to dance. Or they got up, that's a funny translation. They got up to make merry, litzachek. Let's change that. And they got up to make merry. Okay, so that's what's going on. That's what's going on down below. So why do the people make the golden calf? I mean, I hate these kind of rhetorical questions. Nobody wants to raise their hand and say, but maybe someone will articulate it for us. Hiro?
They're lost. Moses isn't around. Moses is the person who brought them out of the land of Egypt, and now he's gone, and so they feel alone. And we have to remember that they still had a slave mentality. They haven't grown up yet. Good. So Hiro does the work for us, and this is I think a classic and sort of obviously correct interpretation, because it says so in the first line. The people are responding directly to the sense that Moses has abandoned them, or at least is gone much longer than they expected, and they don't know what's happened to him. And Hiro says, these are people who are not ready to lead themselves. Moses is the one who, from their perspective, Moses saved them from Egypt. And now they don't have Moses, so they're just abandoned in the desert. They're going to need something else to replace Moses.
Okay, that's like a classic answer, and I think a very strong and good one. Something they build a calf and look at the language here. Look at the language. Moses is the one who took them out of Egypt, the fellow Moses who brought them from the land of Egypt. And now they're saying to this calf, oh, this is your God, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. So some of that language, it's like they want another guide, they want another deliverer, they want another salvation because Moses is gone. Okay, all right. So that's fair. Anybody want to add anything to that? Yeah, I see some folks. Richard.
Sorry, I was on mute. Two things. First of all, I think it's Rashi that goes into this long explanation about how Moses was actually sort of a day late. He came down 40 and a half days later because, they counted the day or something like that. But the more important thing is, if they wanted a substitute for Moses, why not pick a person? Again, they're following a leader into the desert. Why wouldn't they pick another leader, Aaron or Joshua or her? Instead, they make an idol. It's just, it's inconsistent.
Okay, great. That is a good question. I'm going to try hard. I'm going to push aside the second question because it's a great question, but I'm going to try to focus this on the first question that you're answering, which is what is the people's experience here exactly? Jairo gave us a strong and basic understanding of it, and Richard adds to that there is a discussion. Richard, as usual, he's got great pull, and he pulls from some of the classic source material that wonders, well, why was this the moment where they started to worry? And Richard's right. Rashi explains this. Rashi is actually quoting the Talmud, and so I want to look now at the Talmud, which gives us this extra sense of crisis that Richard is alluding to. So here's so I'm going to try and move us away from the people soon, because I want to take a look at Moses's perspective, less examined. But this is the people's perspective, and from their perspective, Moses has been gone a long time. They don't know where he is, and they don't know. And I think I would say that from the plain text of the Torah, it's not even clear that Moses was going to be gone for 40 days. Right? It doesn't say, and Moses told them, I'll see you in 40 days. But the Talmud is going to assume that they knew at least that. And nevertheless, there was still some confusion, and there was still a sense that Moses had tarried even further. So take a look at this piece in the Talmud. This is in Tractate Shabbat. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, what is the meaning of that which is written? And the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down the mountain. He was boshesh. Again, this word boshesh, right here. Do not read it as boshesh, rather read it as ba'u shesh. 6 hours have arrived. So they're seeing in a little clue here. 6 hours have arrived because they imagine, the rabbis imagine, when Moses ascended on high, he said to Israel, in 40 days I will come. At the beginning of 6 hours, I will come. Meaning, I'll come in 40 days right at the beginning of the day. And it seems like maybe he was just a few hours late. Just a few hours late, and that already caused them to freak out, okay? But then the rabbis add an even more interesting story. So that's one answer. One answer is maybe he was just like an hour late. Okay, fine. But I like this answer. This is more interesting. After 40 days, Satan, the Satan that we know from the book of Job, who is not the devil, but a kind of a prosecutor. Satan came and brought confusion to the world. He said to them, oh, that's misspelled. He said to them, where is your teacher Moses? Okay, so Satan comes down. It's like the 40th day, and Satan comes down, and maybe Moses is an hour later than they thought, But Satan comes down, he says, where is Moses? And they said to him, he ascended on high. And he said to them, 6 hours have arrived and he hasn't come yet. But they paid him no attention. And this is fascinating. This is like a new read. The rabbis offer a new kind of people's experience, right? We already are looking at the way the people are freaking out. But in this story, the people didn't freak out right away. They paid him no attention. He said, Moses died. And they paid him no attention. So he showed them an image of Moses's deathbed. You don't believe me? Look, this is Moses. Here's a picture of Moses dead. And that is what the Jewish people said to Aaron. For this Moses, the man who brought us out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him. Right? And that's literally means we don't know. But the way the rabbis are reading it is he's dead. And so we don't know where he is. We don't know, like he's gone from us forever. Okay. So that's the rabbi's spin on this classic understanding that Jairo started us off with, that the people are freaked out and they don't know where Moses is. Here, the rabbis are saying they weren't freaked out at first. They had to be told that Moses was dead and proved, somehow Satan came and proved to them Moses was dead, and then they started to freak out. Okay, so what did the rabbis add to our story? Why is it important to the rabbis that you have this interchange with Satan back and forth that finally convinces them? Okay, what's extra there? Okay, now see, this is a dilemma I have. I see 6 hands up, and if I call on you're going to say, well, that's not the question I was meaning to answer. But so I'll just start calling on folks. David Kurtz?
You know, for me, you're right. I put my hand up and I don't have an answer for that question. So I apologize for that. But for me, I always understood, it made sense literally to me. If you take it from God's perspective, up until now, Exodus has been God's story. God, Moses is kind of the instrument for leading the people out, but it's God's story. And to me, what's happening here is there's a test going on. He's testing Moses and for leadership, because he's basically going to hand it off to him. So Moses goes up the mountain and then the people do what they do. And God says, hey, look what's going, you got to go check out what's going on down there. So obviously God knows what's going on. And he wants to see what Moses is going to do. And Moses goes down, does what he does. He passes the test beautifully, then goes back up the mountain and then writes it, and that's the reward. And certainly when you bookend it with what has happened before, Aaron isn't punished or anything like that. So to me, it feels like God did set this whole thing up as a test for Moses, and then ultimately Moses comes down and he's got so much light and divinity to him that he's passed the test.
Okay,
so that's
all
how
right.
I understand
Okay,
this.
okay. So David is taking us to the next question. And so we'll return to David's reflections later. That is the next place that I want to go, is to think about Moses's experience throughout all this, but we're not there yet. Right now, I still want to just think about the experience that the people have, and we've got a pretty strong reading of that. The people were freaked out that Moses was gone forever. And I just want to know if anyone has any sense of why the rabbis want to turn that into a kind of a realization that Satan himself had to come and force into their heads. They were trusting, and then Satan came and kind of ruined it. Matt Silberstein?
So maybe they want to say Satan comes when you're weak, that this is the kind of time that Satan would come. So here's when you need to be aware.
Yeah. In other words, the Satan represents the growth, like the Satan is the forces of doubt and despair that creep up in moments of weakness.
It's you've been doing it and then it's not happening and you're just going to give up.
Good.
Well, that just going to give up is Satan coming in and.
Good. So it isn't just like 40 days elapsed, you're 6 hours late. This story is meant to convey that it really was, they tried as hard as they could to believe that this was all going to work out. But at a certain point, it's hard not to believe that this guy is dead. I mean, you continue to have faith. I'm sure he's coming down, but at a certain point, it just seems impossible, and the doubts begin to grow. And so it's a process. The part of what the Talmud does is nuances for us this experience that the people are having, is really giving us a sense of the growing doubts, the way that these thoughts were eating away at them. And then finally, they just said, we are stuck here in the desert. This guy's never coming back. So that's the pshat. That's true in the text itself. But what the Talmud does, and I think Matt's telling of it is very helpful. The Talmud is like a psychological account of doubt taking over, despair taking over. Okay, so that's good. That's good. Okay, I see now we're moving through the hour here, and I have said that I keep wanting to get us to Moses's perspective. So what we've done so far is the important first step. First, we have to see that the people had one experience that was different from the experience that Moses had. Okay. Now, the question is, what was Moses' experience? And David started to wonder about that and wonder the way that God was orchestrating Moses' experience. But I want to look now at the moment that Moses hears about the golden calf. We just looked at the moment where the people decided to make the golden calf, but Moses has no idea that the people are making the golden calf. And Moses is up in the clouds. Now, we know that when Moses comes down, he smashes the tablets. And that seems like the reason Moses would do such a thing is that Moses is shocked. Oh my gosh, what's happened? Damn you all, damn you people, you don't deserve this, whatever it is. Moses is horrified at what he sees. But that doesn't make sense because Moses has already heard about it. And so I want to take us back to that moment where Moses first hears about the golden calf and try to imagine what is Moses's experience in that moment. So again, just to remind us of where we've been, Moses goes up to the top of the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. Okay? Then there's tons and tons of laws. Imagine Moses just sitting there for 40 days listening to God teach Torah. And then at the end of the 40 days, God designs, as my mother pointed out, God's own finger designs these tablets and hands them to Moses and says, ta-da, this is it. This beautiful experience you've had up here is coming to a close, and you can transmit it to the people, okay? Then we know that the people make the golden calf. This is the next thing. This is chapter 32, verses 1 through 6. And then verse 7, Moses gets the update. And God, I guess, this is, is God omniscient? So this is one of the places in the Torah you might say, oh, God must be omniscient, right? God knows everything that's happening. So God spoke to Moses and said, hurry down, for your people whom you brought out of the land of Egypt have debased themselves. Shichet amcha asher helitam eretz Mitzrayim. They have debased themselves. They have turned quickly from the way that I commanded them. They have made themselves a molten calf and bowed low to it and sacrificed to it, saying, this is your God, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. What is Moses thinking in this moment? He's sitting there. I mean, if nothing else in this class, if nothing else, the thing that I have been thinking about all week that I wanted to share with you, if nothing else, is just that moment where Moses is communing with God on a level that no human being ever has. Sitting there, not eating or drinking for 40 days and 40 nights. God is with black fire and white fire engraving the 10 commandments. And then all of a sudden God is like, hey, guess what? Oh. Hey, guess what? These people have now started worshiping foreign gods. They've made a gold. Moses, we just read that. Moses has no idea. And God says they made a golden calf and are worshiping it down there. What is imagine the record scratch. What is Moses thinking in this moment? What did you say the people are doing? Didn't they just tell me to go up for them, right? Didn't I tell them that I'd be back? What do you mean? What do you mean? And then God continues, and it gets worse. God says, Adonai, God says further to Moses, I see this as a stiff-necked people. Now, let me be that my anger may blaze forth against them and that I may destroy them and make of you a great nation. But Moses implored his God, Adonai, saying, let not your anger, Adonai, blaze forth against your people, whom you delivered from the land of Egypt with great power and with a mighty hand. Let not the Egyptians say it was with evil intent that he delivered them, only to kill them off in the mountains and annihilate them from the face of the earth. Turn from your blazing anger and renounce the plan to punish your people. Remember your servants Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, how you swore to them by yourself and said to them, I will make your offspring as numerous as the stars of the heavens, and I will give to your offspring this whole land of which I spoke to possess forever. And Adonai renounced the punishment planned for God's people. Okay, so that's, I was just asking you, what is Moses' experience at hearing the news? And then a second later, Moses is already arguing, defending the people. He goes immediately into defense mode. So I guess I'm just asking, so what do you think is going on with Moses? What is his experience in that moment? Is he crestfallen? Is he angry? Is he shocked? Can he not believe the news? Is it obvious? What do you think Moses is thinking right now? All right, let's turn to Yael.
I imagine that Moses has continued to feel this hope in these people. And one thing that's been bothering me is Aaron could have responded differently. Why didn't Aaron say, it isn't Moses that brought you out of Egypt, it's Adonai, and Adonai is still here with you.
Yeah.
Adonai opened the sea. Adonai brought you the manna. Adonai has kept us in life, and we don't need to build a golden calf. We
Right.
can still worship the ineffable Adonai because he's still here. And
Yeah.
it bothers me that he didn't take that position, because that was his position as leader. That was his responsibility.
Fair enough. I think that's right. There's a whole side investigation here we could do of what the heck Aaron is thinking. But again, I'm tabling that for now, because we just won't be able to do all of that. What the question I have in front of us right now is, what was it like for Moses to hear the news of the golden calf? And this is an important question, both because of the two perspectives framing that I gave at the outset, but also because we're going to need to know what Moses is thinking now if we're going to understand what he's thinking when he throws the tablets, right? Because he already knows the tablets are not, that's not a moment of shock for him, right? That's my point. Moses doesn't go down and, oh, what happened? No, Moses knows. So what is he thinking now? And is he just calm, cool, and collected? Because maybe that's it. God says, now I'm going to destroy the people. Moses is like, yeah, you don't want to do that. And I know they're probably doing that down. Like, is he shocked, or is this part of the job? And what do you imagine here? So I'm going to turn to Allison Goldman.
I think he's panicking. I think he's really stressed out. Even I wish I spoke Hebrew, but in the English, Moses pleaded before Hashem. I think there's a desperation there. And I can imagine, having been on top of that mountain, it must have been extremely awe-inspiring. All of that power, that whole cloud that when all the Israelites were together was already terrifying. Now Moses is experiencing it alone on top of a mountain. And Hashem has just done this extraordinary thing, which is to carve tablets out of sapphires and create this amazing miracle. So Moses is seeing how powerful Hashem is. And all of a sudden he finds out that his people, I'm imagining if I was studying with the greatest teacher ever, and then news came that my dog was peeing on his carpet or something, I would be so embarrassed and apologetic, and also defend, please don't kill my dog, But I think it explains sort of both, like why he responded right away to Hashem, desperately trying to save the people, and also why he would be like so shocked and upset with them.
I love that whole account that you just gave, Allison. That's so, I mean, also the parable you gave us, but or the analogy you gave us. But yes, that's it. What you did so well there is to allow us to sympathize with Moses and the terrible experience that Moses must have had on the mountain, the come down, the rip down from the transcendent to the not just mundane, but to the disastrous, and the disastrous which he is implicated in, right? And now this, so Allison describes it as crisis. He's in a crisis, like suddenly he's panicking. Panicking was the word you used. What's going? And I think if we think of Moses as himself in a state of confusion and panic, that brings a new lens to our understanding of all of Moses's movements for the rest of the scene. Okay, let's take a look at one of them, the famous one, right? The smashing of the tablets. Because now that we know that Moses already knows, so then we have a different kind of question about the smashing of the tablets. What is Moses thinking then? Let's take a look. Moses hears this news, and not only does he hear this news, but he hears the news. He must have been shocked right here. And then God continues and says, I'm actually going to kill them. And not only will I kill them, but I'll make you a great nation instead. But Moses doesn't take that bait and instead goes straight into, maybe full of panic, but he manages to go straight into, if Satan is the prosecutor, he's the defense attorney, right? And then, remember, God said, hurry down. Then Moses goes down and went down from the mountain with the tablets inscribed on both their surfaces. They were inscribed on the one side and not the other. And I have to ask at this point, why is Moses even taking them down? Does Moses intend to smash them? Does Moses intend to give them to the people? If Moses already feels that the people don't deserve the tablets, why is he even taking them? But I don't know. The tablets were God's work and the writing was God's writing. This is what my mother emphasized. Inscribed upon the tablets. This is a very special thing, a holy thing. When Joshua heard Joshua's back. He heard the sound of the people and its boisterousness. So presumably Moses came halfway down the mountain. Joshua was waiting for 40 days. And he said to Moses, there's a cry of war in the camp. But Moses answered, it's not the sound of the tune of triumph or the sound of the tune to defeat. It's simply a sound that I hear. And here it is. As soon as Moses came near the camp and saw the calf and the dancing, he became enraged. And again, I have to ask, why is Moses enraged now? He already knows what they're doing. Is it the visual? And he hurled the tablets from his hands and shattered them at the foot of the mountain. So now you see, if we just take this carefully and we see that Moses knows what's going on, then we have to ask the question. I mean, we've had some good answers to the question of Moses's state of mind. Allison just did a lovely illustration of what Moses might be going through. But then what does that mean for the next moment in the scene? Is he now like planning to go down and smash the tablets? Was it different when he saw the people? What's Moses up to and thinking as he heads down the mountain? Okay, who can speak to that? See, Jen's got a hand up. Oh no, yeah, Jen, are you there?
I was muted.
Great.
This is speaking to both of those moments, I think, because I'm really struck by like that first argument that Moses makes, which is we sure are going to look bad if you destroy all of these people. And sort of underneath that, all of this suffering is going to mean nothing. All of this effort is going to mean nothing. This story is going to have a completely unsatisfying ending. The narrative isn't going to make any sense if we get to this point and everyone's destroyed. And when he comes down the mountain, it's that same moment of disjunction of like, no, hold on. We had this whole story. We did this whole thing. It has to mean something. You all have to let it mean something inside of you. Your suffering has to be like that teleological idea that like all of the things that you've gone through, all of the like pain and suffering needs to lead to something better. or else we can't tolerate it. I can't tolerate it. I'm enraged at all of it, and I'm going to destroy everything.
Okay, that's a really interesting perspective, or couple of perspectives that Jen has given us, because where Allison was sympathetic towards Moses, Jen is almost impressed with Moses's ability to speak to different populations and try to kind of, Moses is talking everyone down, or Moses is speaking to the moment for two different audiences. Moses, maybe at first he was shocked, but being the unusual leader that he is, he quickly, to God, he says, whoa, 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 like, let's not get carried away. To the people, he says, how dare you have gotten so carried away? Moses is now negotiating the entire situation, and he has to show, it's all you might read this, in other words, as Moses's leadership genius, that he is shocked, but immediately he has to go into pacifying God. But when he comes to the people, he has a different message for them, because he's now trying to mediate this entire situation, right? And that reading of Moses is one that is not bewildered, but almost a man that expects crisis, that is used to crisis, and that understands that we just have to move through crisis. So everybody calm down. You people need a talking to. God, you need a calming, a timeout. But Moses is like now negotiating everybody else's needs. And in a way, this is not Moses, the bewildered, shocked figure. Maybe he had that for a second, but Moses immediately flies into action. So that's an interesting read. Joni?
So Moses, I think we're seeing a prophet and a human being in the same person, and that is his appeal. But Moses also knows we come from Avram. We have a relationship with idols. He's come from the palace. He's lived a certain kind of life, and I think asking God for forgiveness is putting in a good word for himself for the end of this journey. I think he's that sense of prophecy, those flaws that I have in myself, I so want to get to the other side of this. So forgive them. At some point, I will need your forgiveness. And he encompasses this humanity, and yet a visionary.
So I like that. I like that that account of Moses as someone who identifies with the people, because Moses understands that we're all flawed. We're people. Moses isn't just this separate mediator character. Moses is part of the people and understands the people, and is trying to reason with God and say, look, you're going to have to start forgiving people. Nobody, not I or anyone else, could live up to your standards. I want to just share with you before we close, on the heels of both Jen's and Joni's comments, right? That imagine Moses summoning strength, first of all, and doing what needs to be done, but also identifying with the people. And I think we looked at one piece of Talmud that wondered what was the people's experience. Here's another piece of Talmud that does the same thing with Moses' experience, and I think has echoes of what we've heard from both Jen and Joni. So take a look at this. This will be the last thing we look at. The Talmud here says, and the Lord says to Moses, go descend, for your people whom you have lifted out of the land of Egypt have debased themselves. What is the meaning of go and descend? Why does God have to say go down? Of course you're going down. Rabbi Elazar said, the Holy Blessed One said to Moses, Moses, descend from your greatness. You go down a level now, because isn't it only for the sake of Israel that I granted you prominence? And now that Israel has sinned, why do I need you? Now that's not, in the text of the Torah, God says, I'll make a great nation of you. But the rabbis are imagining it more like Joni. The rabbis are saying, Moses was one of the people. Moses was part of, Moses is implicated by the people. Their failure is his failure. And look at this line, Miyad tashash kocho shel Moshe. Immediately his strength waned and he was powerless to speak. Moses was stunned. This is Allison's Moses. Moses was shocked. Moses was overwhelmed. Moses was like freaked out. He was paralyzed. This is the Moses that I've been looking for. This is the Moses that I've been wondering about. What was it like for him? It was paralyzing. But once God said to Moses, leave me be that I may destroy them, Moses then said, the matter is dependent on me. I have to do something. And immediately Moses stood and was strengthened in prayer and asked God for mercy. Okay, so both Allison's Moses and Jen's Moses, right? Moses was freaked out. Moses was terrified. And then in the next moment, Moses realized, well, I'm the only one that can save this situation. And he just goes in and does. That's a remarkable account of leadership, both the humanity of Moses, but also the unique strategic psychological leadership brilliance that he possessed. Okay, lots of hands up, and we're coming here to the end of our hour. And in some ways, I don't feel like we've arrived anywhere except at a deeper appreciation of what this experience must have been like for Moses on high, and contrasted that with the experience of what it must have been like for those down below. But as we separate those experiences, we begin to understand, I think, that nobody but God and us has a full understanding of what's happening in the narrative of the Torah. No, only we have a unique perspective. We have God's perspective on the Torah, but even Moses doesn't have that perspective. The people certainly don't, but Moses too is sometimes in a place where he doesn't know what what's happening, the rest of the action, right? So that's a fine place to leave off. I want to leave off just with one last further question, which is just like, did the people, to return to the Pachad Yitzchak's question, the Pachad Yitzchak said, the judgment and then the forgiveness all happened on high. And think about what he's saying there. The people never even knew that God was going to destroy them. The people never even knew. And I'll make this point and then we'll close our class. The reason that we know that is because the quote here, let me alone and I will destroy them, that's from Deuteronomy. And it's in Deuteronomy that, I'm just scrolling around, this is not helpful. It's in Deuteronomy that Moses finally tells the people, this is what happened. But it's not even the same people. It's a generation later. And Moses explained, God was going to kill you, but I argued with God. And the people never knew that. The people's experience, just to think of them one last time, is that Moses comes down. We thought he was gone, dead for all we knew. And all of a sudden he comes blazing out of the clouds, throwing things at them, killing people, starting a war. Like the people also, when Moses returned, it wasn't a comfort either. It was a shock, right? So there's more work to do here, more thinking to do about, so what was that moment when Moses smashed the tablets? Did the people turn around and say, oh, you got us? Or were the people completely shocked that there was a Moses at all? And why are you angry? We are angry at you, right? There's a lot more work that needs to be done here in really figuring out what's the dialogue, what's the interchange between what's going up above and what's going on down below. So let's keep that lens in our minds for this Parsha, for the Golden Calf, but also as we move through the Torah. Anytime we see Moses up there, we got to know that the people don't know what's going on. And this has been like, for me, the most interesting part, anytime Moses is up there, we got to assume Moses doesn't know what's going on, okay? Only we know, only we and God know. And that's the perspective the Torah gives us. Okay, great learning with you. I will see you next week.